He's ahead 48 to 38, which is a dramatic shift. So, and you can see that Obama's already abandoned all of the white middle-class workers, and all of his speeches now go to the students. So how are we going to change that? We're going to combat that. We're going to get all the young people out to vote for us. We're going to get them to work our campaigns. We're going to get them to vote against this administration and their disastrous policies. And so one of the ways we're going to do that is we're going to do it with our guest speaker tonight. Our guest speaker is, let's see, Ricky, you're going to be 25. I know it's this, is it this week? Yesterday. Yesterday, okay, see, this week. Yeah. Congratulations, by the way.
Call your insurance agent to reduce your rates.
Some of you can remember when you were 25, some of us can't. But let me tell you a little about Ricky, because 25 is strictly a number. I've known Ricky's parents since before Ricky was born. We joke about that. I actually sold his dad a vineyard in 1982, their very first vineyard. So Ricky wasn't even a gleam in his parents' eye at the time. Ricky had put himself through school, went through Princeton, not a bad school. Went through Bolt Law School, 2 years, not bad, pretty impressive. He has been endorsed by a number of significant national leaders, which is helping to drive a lot of that interest in our state and in our orphan state. He's been endorsed by Jeb Bush, Condoleezza Rice, Chris Christie, a whole slew of people that I could go on and on with. He's had a number of meetings with John Boehner, with Eric Cantor. Karl Rove has been helping. There's a lot of people that you know, names you know, that are helping Ricky. And why? Because they see a young man who's brilliant, who's got a vision, and it's a good vision. He is unflappable, and he's going to be our next congressman from California 9, and you're going to get out there, you're going to hear him. A lot of you have already heard him, but you'll hear him again. And afterwards, I guarantee you're going to get out there and say, hey, we got to get out and get votes out for Ricky, because he's going to get rid of this, I'll just call him what he is, dingbat that we have as a current congressman, and we're going to have a whole new view of Washington and a whole different dynamic on leadership. Ricky is, I've known, like I said, I've known him a long time. He was on the State Board of Education when he was 17, and that tells you how focused Ricky is. And I think that's the best term I can use, besides just his heart's in the right place. So with that, we'll introduce our next congressman, California 9, Ricky Gill.
Gary, you stole my thunder on a couple of fronts. I was just going to apprise everybody in the audience that we crossed our last constitutional barrier, turning 25 yesterday, and so I'm really happy to be here with you. And I actually couldn't think of anybody better than Gary Duncan to introduce me. Gary and I have some personal history, all of which is positive. He's more than just a party leader, he's a real family friend. So Gary, thanks for everything you've done to step up. I think we titled our remarks tonight, The New West Coast Offense for the Republican Party. And I kind of coined this phrase very spontaneously. Governor Jeb Bush and I were doing an event together, and we were sitting on stage, and I actually uttered this phrase. I said, we're trying to create a new paradigm in this campaign, because it's been so long since we've beaten a Democratic congressman in California. I won't tell you how old I was when that happened. It was 18 years ago. So this kind of desperation mentality that we've got to do something different to finally win, and it's going to be that paradigm shift. And I coined the phrase "New West Coast Offense." And at this event, when I uttered this, I looked out in the audience, kind of much like today, and there weren't always familiar faces. A lot of friendly faces here. Whether it's Dennis Shore, Dennis Cochran. I'm sure there's another Dennis here. Definitely, actually.
Yeah.
So there's three of you. Yeah. But I looked out in the audience and I saw Carmen Policy. I don't know if you know Carmen Policy. Some of you must be 49er fans, but he was president of the San Francisco 49ers during their heyday, and he really was, he put in place the talent that created the West Coast offense. And so I thought, after that this phrase really stuck and gave meaning to what we were doing. And that's probably the best way to describe what this campaign's about. It is a real tectonic shift. We've got Jerry McNerney more than nervous. In fact, now the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee has a whole website devoted to attacking me every day. They're up and they're relentless. It tells you that we're a sincere threat. And I'm here to tell you about the status of the race. Before I get to that, you all know the foundation of our campaign. It was a very core, basic idea. And it was the idea that this country was founded on, self-determination. You know, when I announced my campaign in the newly drawn 9th district, I was running to restore our voice. There wasn't a single state or federal legislator that lived in this district. We had no control over our own destiny, and that was a deep problem. And so when I get attacked, particularly by the Democratic machine, because it's coming out, it's because I'm speaking truth to power. I'm the one saying that we don't need to import our country. We're the ones articulating that we can do better than Jerry McNerney. And we're killing all the stereotypes out there about the party, and when that happens, they come at you twice as hard. That's happening to me now. Actually, they greeted my birthday. They greeted me on my birthday with this attack website. So they've taken the gloves off, and I hope you'll join me in this effort too. So this campaign is about us restoring our seat at the table. And I want you to know Jerry McNerney, despite all the window dressing, has not served you. And I'm probably speaking to a captive audience. You already know this. Let me articulate the reasons why. On the issue of jobs, my opponent is so myopically focused on green energy jobs, he's lost sight of what makes our economy tick. You know, there was just a study that came out on how many green jobs have come to this county since he got elected. He promised us tens of thousands of green jobs. You know how many materialized? 67. And that counts bus drivers as a green job. So his full myopic vision has not materialized. And yet on his mailers, he still touts green jobs. In terms of the real green jobs we've got, and I know this because my family's been farming here longer than I've been alive, on agriculture, my opponent has sold us out. He sold us out on free trade. He sold us out on regulatory reform. On every initiative that a farmer cares about, he has been derelict in his duties. He has an F rating from the American Farm Bureau. Now, if you think someone like that, with that perspective, should be representing a district like this where agriculture is our biggest economy, I hope you'll join me in rejecting that. Because we're better than that. We've got wool being pulled over our eyes right now. The other issue is the debt. And I know I'm just lining up a bill of particulars here, but there's so much that he has fundamentally failed on. When he got elected in 2006, he said, we should not be spending more than comes into the federal treasury. I know that sounds like an easy proposition, but now we won't vote for a balanced budget amendment. I would. So he failed us on that score. I look at the issue of public education. It matters a lot to me as a young person. You know, we're failing a lot of young people, in particularly Stockton public schools, through no fault of their own. I'm a big advocate for charter schools and choice in public education. I want to mobilize parents. I think if we have more market forces, we're going to hold the entrenched interests accountable, right? If they're not doing a good job, then parents are going to be able to move their kids around. It's a way to hold everybody honest. Well, there was an episode here with a school in Stockton where I made a very defiant stand. And I'd like to just indulge you for a moment about that. It's called the Stockton Early College Academy. Have any of you heard about SJGOP? Steve Smith, you better have heard about SJGOP. Well, this is a high-performing public school, if I'm not mistaken, Steve, one of the highest in Stockton Unified. And they felt a measure of oppression. Very arbitrary, it's kind of a power play. Steve, I accept you from all district attendants here. But basically, you know, this is a school district, a school that was operating according to our highest expectations. And yet they were, you know, forced to basically have their charter essentially rescinded. They were feeling a measure of pressure. They went to Jerry McNerney, parents did, and said, will you help us out? And he looked at them in the face and said, you know, the interests that get me elected are not in line with you. And he turned his back on kids who come from at-risk environments, precisely the kind of young people we need to be defending. What mattered more to him was his election than those young people. So those parents came to me the next week. We met up for lunch at Day One. They said, Ricky, will you help us? And we did an event at the Scottish Rite Temple. We had 200 parents there. And you know who was in that audience? Jerry. Precisely the kind of people who they say Republicans can't win. Asian American parents, Hispanic parents. These are the people that we need to reach to build our party. And those are the folks that we were able to cultivate through the education issue. So when I mean building a new West Coast offense, we've got to use issues that have that appeal. Charter schools, I think, is a great example of it. That's a case where McNerney cared more about his election and the destiny of this district. We cannot let this continue. And the final indictment here is public trust. You know, we have had a generation of people get elected to office who have forgotten where they come from. You know that. You turn on the TV, you see C-SPAN, you wonder, you know, what happened? These guys have a head that's much bigger than the size of this room. They have forgotten their origins. And McNerney sold us short too. He defaulted on the public trust. When he got elected, my opponent said, he would never meet with lobbyists. And then we found out he hired a lobbyist to try to corrupt the redistricting commission. So on a whole series of things, we've been very disappointed. And when they attack me, they really attack our ability to understand his shortcomings. So we've analyzed the problem. I think this campaign is the solution. Getting back to my first point, which is what can we do as a party to remain competitive? Because there have been a lot of questions about our relevance in the state of California. I will tell you, in a district like this, we have the chance to make the point that the Republican Party is still a viable force in California politics. This is a swing district. Jerry McNerney is not reflective of us. He may have just moved down the street a couple of weeks ago. He's never been one of us in the Valley. And if we can't beat someone like him with his record, with a circumstance like this, then we do have real problems. And I'm not willing to let that happen. So here are the things I think we should be talking about to really mobilize people. You know, we often as a party, we get hit for not being fair. You know, the Democrats are very good at branding us as being unfair. They use these equity, fairness arguments all the time. We shouldn't be allowed to be so easily portrayed as the bad guy. You know, we can be on the side of fairness too, but it's how we emphasize the issues. So much matters in terms of tone, and a lot matters in terms of what you choose to emphasize. And I think we have the arguments in our arsenal. We just got to look deep within and talk about it. If we talk about a balanced budget amendment, for example, we are being fair to the next generation of taxpayers who aren't voting now, but they're being mortgaged away. That future is being jeopardized. Let's talk about that. You know, I think that's fair. It's fair to not engage in taxpayer-funded giveaways to your political friends. Jerry McNerney was part of that. He voted for the Solyndra giveaway. And then they turned around and gave him a campaign contribution. So that's also not fair. I mean, the president talks a lot about playing by the same rules. That's not equitable either. If we're talking about charter schools and choice, we're mobilizing young people. We're talking about the core interest. It's not the entrenched interest, it's the young people. We got to focus on education reform at the grassroots level. You know, if we're talking about good and clean and leaner and smarter government, I think that's fair too. Everybody, no matter what your party, deserves a good, clean, honest government. You know, in this campaign, we're talking about a single subject rule so that every bill in Congress applies to just one topic. I think it's long overdue. We're talking about sunset provisions. So when thank you. We're talking about sunset provisions so that when a law is passed, it doesn't last forever. You know, we shouldn't have the dead hand of the past controlling Congress years into the future, right? I mean, your elected representatives owe you a lot more. They should be working. They should be evaluating what works and seeing what doesn't. You know, if we're the party that talks about skilled immigration reform, I know this is not a very exotic topic, but I'll bring it up nonetheless because it's important. Let's delve into this for a second. Every job, all net job creation from President Reagan's presidency to today could be accounted for in high-growth startup activity. So these are companies in their infancy, year 1 to 5. That's where the real growth spurt in the economy happens. We have a mind-numbing immigration policy on the skilled side. We have so many bright young students. They come here from Europe or Asia. They come here on student visas. They get great advanced engineering degrees, and then we make it tough for these people to stay here. Those are precisely the kind of people that could be creating new jobs in Stockton. We definitely need it, and so I push for that too. Now again, these are reforms on the margins, but if we're the party talking about this, we gain a lot of credibility. We gain a lot of legitimacy because we're telling the truth, and we're advancing a very basic bread and butter issue. Bread and butter matters because you guys are all eating, I'm not, so throw that in there. The last issue is trade promotion. I talk a lot about this because we're in a farming district. You know, my opponent on every single free trade measure, even the bipartisan ones that have come up, he's voted against them. You know, President Obama and House Republicans, they're often at loggerheads, right? But on one thing they agreed last year, which is let's push free trade together, South Korea, Colombia, Panama. And there's almost every member of Congress who represents the farming district voted for it. Because the more market access we have overseas, the better our local farmers do. Now, I don't agree with the Stockton record on everything. Trust me, they're probably going to come after me too. But they wrote a great article about 6 months ago on how a couple of walnut farmers in Linden and Escalon were quadrupling their exports because they're now trading with South Korean farmers. Think about the new net job creation that was responsible. I mean, I don't have a number for it, but it was actually pretty substantial. Well, your congressman voted against all three, and he's never been held to account. Now, the real explanation is because the people funding his campaign tell him what to do. You know, he talks a good game about defending the average person. But over the course of 6 years, he's taken $3 million in special interest money. He's part of that system. And they control him. You don't control him. He's sensitive to them, not to you. So this campaign is really about restoring our voice. You know, in a lot of congressional races, you get the standard set of issues, right? And I'm upset about all these things too. Frivolous spending, the stimulus that didn't bring down unemployment here, the fact that, you know, on education we're being failed, on health care, which was basically a runaway spending plan without solving the problem. I'm upset about all that. But I'm upset here particularly because our community has outsourced our congressman for a long time to a community that does not represent us. You know, if my opponent had a place to run over there in the Bay Area, he would have stayed there. We're playing second fiddle again. And in this campaign, we've got a historic chance to fix that. I want you to know it's really exciting. You know, we, in spite of the fact that sometimes I feel like I'm losing weight, we're working so hard. It is going great. We're just down the road. I was telling Dennis Shore, we're on Highway 5, Marching Lane, on the other side. Actually, on this side, we're on March and Feather River. We're right next to Jamba Juice and Subway. I'd be eternally grateful if you would consider stopping off. We've got 6 people over there banging out phone calls. They're dialing people. They're talking about the Ricky Gill campaign. And we're getting an amazingly good response. You know, the poll numbers are positive. This district wants to elect a Republican congressman. They are not sold on McNerney. They know that he has failed us. And we are that alternative, and I need your help to get across the finish line. So we're doing everything conceivable known to us, but I need your help too. You know, the power in numbers, and I'd love to have your help too. This race is nationally targeted. You know, there's a special surprise coming for you guys on Wednesday and Saturday. We've got some national figures who have recorded some auto calls for us, so you'll probably be getting that on a landline. Don't hang up, listen to it. But things are really exciting. And here's a chance for us as a community to send someone to Washington who we can actually really grab a hold of and be proud of, who's one of us. And I think we deserve a lot better. You know, I think we really do. And if restoring our voice in politics was not a noble notion, I'm not sure what else is. You know, we deserve that seat at the table. And I hope you'll join me. Thank you so much.
We'll have a little time for questions. Anybody got questions out there for Ricky? Steve?
Hey, Steve.
Ricky, there's tens of thousands of veterans in here. You didn't make any mention of what you can do for them, or what McNerney's misrepresenting. Don't give that constituency away to it. You've got to bring that out.
Not at all, Steve. You know, both of my grandparents were wounded in World War II. They are living examples. Actually, got a 99-year-old grandfather. He is a living example of, I think, the courage that was waged overseas. They were the British military. So I've never forgotten that. Steve, we've talked about this.
Yeah, but Tracy has the highest per capita loss of life from these 2 wars.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Gold Star parents around here.
Yeah.
Reach out to them. They will tell you.
Yeah, we absolutely are. And we're going to continue to do that.
But you got to hammer when you go to these things here so people are reminded of it. McNerney did not, folks, start this VA hospital issue around here. In fact, when I reached out to get his help, he did not return any phone calls. And Gary, his aide, says, "Oh, we don't get involved in local issues." Well, the VA hospital is not a local issue. They just shunned it. So what he's been touting, it was originally started by Richard Pombo. He's trying to take the credit for it, just like Obama today was trying to take credit for the Hoover Dam and the Golden Gate Bridge. Honest, I'm not lying. If it's on the news.
Steve, you know, to get back to a bigger point, we can see nothing in this campaign.
Bring it out. Bring it out. And
we're bringing it out. And, you know, what's unfortunate is the credit claiming that happens in politics. You know, he's taking credit for something that, and I know we have Supervisor Ornelas here. I think Leroy's probably he's better equipped to talk about this than I am. There were a lot of people who played a role in that.
Yes, there is.
And it's very unfortunate for someone to try to monopolize credit. It's an indignity to the county supervisor.
Absolutely.
I know that.
But you got to hammer him too, because you're running against him, not Leroy.
Yes.
Ricky, you said that McNerney's taken over $3 million in lobbyist money?
Over the past 6 years.
Okay. Would you accept any lobbyist money over your 6 years?
Well, I'll tell you what we would do. We would, you know, for example, the only money that I've taken to date, almost all of my money comes from individuals. The only real contributions that I've taken to date have been from groups that should be in line with someone like me, like the Farm Bureau. So almost all of our money today has come from individuals, which I'm very proud of, because the people, by and large, who have donated to me can vote for me. That is not the case with Jerry McNerney. Jerry McNerney gets almost all his money from two places. The Bay Area primarily. If you look at his FEC list, it is not representative of this community. It's Danville, Oakland, San Jose, Alameda. But the top 7 zip codes for him are Washington, D.C. You think about that. So he's more sensitive to them than us. You know, what I can tell you is that in this campaign, I think we had 1,500 or 1,600 individuals donate. You know, no individual donor controls you. And when you've raised the amount that we have, it gives you a lot of independence. Because it's not one person who can tell you what to do. You've got a room full of people, and you have to be answerable to all of them.
So that would be a no, that you wouldn't be taking any lobbyist money in the next. I could see you being there for 6 years. Would you entertain that?
You got to get elected first, right?
I'm a forward-thinking person. That's why I'm asking a 6-year question.
I'll tell you what. In terms of the contributions that I would take, they would come from groups that I already agree with. So they are not going to be shaping my opinions. Now let me tell you where McNerney is.
Well, I know about him. That was the answer I was looking for.
So only from groups that I would really have an ideological agreement with on farming issues. I mean, I've talked about agriculture from day one of this campaign because it's part of who I am and it's not who he is. Hence the Farm Bureau contribution. I think so. I'd like to keep that consistency.
Thank you.
Thank you. But here's another. Let me give you an example of my opponent, though, and I want to get this out. I've not said this, but I think it needs to be aired. He talks a lot about the foreclosure crisis in Stockton. He talks a lot about it. In his 6 years, he's held I think only one foreclosure workshop, which is actually pretty minimal. So he's done one foreclosure workshop in 6 years in Congress, which is pretty pathetic. But he's taken money, so while he decries the foreclosure situation here, he is taking money from all the groups that will not assist people when they're in tough times on foreclosures. They are anti-foreclosure relief. Now you can debate whether or not someone should be for foreclosure relief, but here's what we cannot accept. Someone talking out of both sides of their mouth. He talks a good game on foreclosures and then takes money from the people who don't want to do anything to fix the problem. So hypocrisy is something that's nothing new with him.
Can you tell us what support you're getting from the National Party?
Yeah, well, so there's a defined program called the Young Guns Program. And it's something that Kevin McCarthy, who's now the House Whip, helped initiate, I think, 3-4 years ago. And Kevin is a good friend of the campaigns. He was actually just at our office last month, made a spontaneous surprise visit. As you know, this program is supposed to target resources on races that they can win. And there are certain tiers to the program. They have not announced their classic Young Guns, but there's the highest tier that they have announced, which is Contender. And there are only 11 people who were first initiated as contender candidates. We were one of them. And we are continuing to progress through the ranks. The National Party is excited. That's one reason why we've gotten all these surrogates. They really want to win this, and this is rising to the top of their list of ones that they can pick up. And there are a couple of categories, right? They've got to defend incumbents who are vulnerable, but they've got to pick up seats. You know, that second ledger, this is at the top of the list. Dennis, and then...
I just heard yesterday that you were on Fox News a month ago. I didn't know anything about it. We watch Fox all the time. What was it about?
Well, it's actually on our website. And since you mentioned that, Dennis, so I feel shameless peddling my own website. You know? With American politics, look what this does to you. But RickyGill.com is a website. I know, Anna, you saw it. Via Facebook, I heard about that. So just go to RickyGill.com. I think there's a video bar on the bottom, and it's the second or third video, and you'll see it live there. Now, there are a couple other videos on that video bar, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. We have commercials now that are running on cable TV, on Fox News, on CNN. If you're a golfer, you're probably better than I am, but you also watch Golf Channel, so you can catch the ad there too. And we're running 2 ads, and they're kind of weaving between each other. The first is kind of an intro ad with my biography, and the second is about us sticking together. You know, local representation is a big thing here. And I think our path to victory is by reaching people who want a Valley voice. You know, we've been really criticized in this community. They say some nasty things about us. And I get back to my first point, which is that the best we can do is have some, you know, out-of-town rental congressman that, you know, it says something about us. And we've got to say no to that idea. Oh, Alma, you have a question.
Oh. Actually, just very quick, can you clarify for me the Young Guns program?
Yeah.
Where does money to that program come from?
Well, there are a lot of different sources, and I'm happy to clarify it. So members of Congress raise money. Ethan probably knows about this too, but members of
That's what I
Congress...
told him. I probably could have just asked.
Members of Congress raise money, so when you're initiated in the final class of Young Guns, you know, members will write contributions to you. We've already gotten contributions from members of Congress, but that accelerates it. It's also a signal to all these other groups who are interested in funding campaigns or getting involved that these are the high priority races. So it's kind of like a smoke signal to come here. And it's a green light for people to really step in. There are institutional contributors who donate to a lot of candidates around the country. This is just a way of saying these are our most credible prospects of victory.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Who are you doing a joint walk with Saturday morning? That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we just was told about this. Leroy and Alice and I are going to be walking. I don't know which neighborhoods, but we've got a couple of out-of-town fundraising trips where we're coming back on Friday morning, and I'm going to be sweating. So. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one other thing, which is that the Democratic Party does not just hit me on the website. They greeted me with that birthday website, but they actually follow me around with a camera. You know that. And so we've got someone in this room who's doing just that again. Every time I come to the old spaghetti factory, they find me.
Yeah.
But listen, I appreciate everything you're doing. I just want you to know we are in a real fight. And in a couple of things, and it's not Leroy or Ellis there.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I want to make this party point. When they come after me, they're really coming after you because they're saying people in the Valley can't represent themselves. When they come after me for everything that I've done in my family small business, in my family farming, they're doing two things. They're attacking the family farmers in this district who know what it's like to earn a living on a family farm and keep land green. Actually, they're the real conservationists, is the family farmers, right? And secondly, you know, when they attack my family, which is now happening, that's how disgusting this gets. They're attacking the notion that in one generation, good things can happen in America. You know, my mother and father did not come here with anything. My mother was a 21-year-old doctor when she settled in the city of Stockton. And when they attack them, they're attacking the idea that there's possibility here. And I'd like to think that my folks are still working parents, you know. Gary knows this.
They are.
They're a great source of guidance for a lot of people, not just me. But, you know, my mother gets up at 4 a.m. and takes call to deliver babies. You know, and so there's a lot of earned success. And don't let the Democrats stereotype that story. Because when they tear me down, they're tearing you down too. And I'd love to have you stand with me. Please join us at our headquarters. I'd be honored by your support too. Thanks.
And a belated happy birthday. And I want to tell you one quick story, and then I'm going to have Leroy come up for a minute. I was talking at Ricky's grand opening with his uncle, and I had never met his uncle. I knew his whole family, but had not met his uncle. And his uncle is the chief trauma surgeon for the state of Florida. He has a Secret Service clearance even for any candidate who has traumatic injury. He's the one they call. And when he moved to Pensacola, Florida, 26 years ago, he said there were 0 Republicans at any state level in Florida. And Florida is now considered basically a red state. So if that doesn't give you hope, there you go. There's some pretty darn good, you know, a goal for us. And let's don't take 26 years to turn this state around.